All right. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from. I'm Tim Bromley, Executive Senior Partner and Technology Practice Lead here at Talentfoot. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, where we're diving into data, AI, and the future-ready CDO. For those of you who might not be familiar with Talentfoot, let me give you a quick 30-second elevator pitch. Our mission is simple. To future-proof organizations by securing forward-thinking leaders who drive growth, innovation, and profitability. From rising stars to seasoned C-suite leaders, we partner with organizations across industries from fast-moving startups to Fortune 50 companies, with a specialty in supporting lower to mid-market organizations ready to scale and innovate. Now, why are we here today? If you're a senior technology leader, an inspiring CDO, or a decision maker building high-performing teams, you come to the right place. Today, our conversation is about arming you with actionable insights to navigate the evolving data landscape, prepare for the future, and most importantly, drive impact in your organization. But before we jump in, let's meet the incredible leaders joining us today. These are true experts in the field of data analytics. And first up, we have Jeffrey Voorhees. Jeff, can you share a little bit about your journey and becoming a CDAO and what excites you most about the field right now?
Absolutely, and I appreciate the introduction, Tim. My name is Jeffrey Voorhees. I built a career using data analytics and AI to grow large organizations. My background includes roles, global operations roles, running large e-commerce portfolios, but primarily anchored in using data and technology to grow companies. My work in analytics and AI goes back over a year. This is over a decade. This is before we really use the term artificial intelligence in the common parlance. And my work over time has been cited in the Wall Street Journal, the Harvard Business Review, and the MIT Technology Review. What I'm most excited about really is, and I think this might be a nice setup to one of the topics we'll discuss today, is how the CDAO role continues to evolve into what really is the most challenging and complex role that most organizations will face in the coming decade.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said, Jeff. Thank you so much for that. And obviously, in your experience coming from financial services, large organizations, highly regulatory environments, I know that'll resonate well with some audience that are joining today. Next, we're joined by Matthew Knapp. Matt, tell us a little bit about your career path and your current role as a CDO. Oh, Matt.
Okay, there we go. Thanks, Tim. I've been working in data for 20 years, creating and managing data teams, data ecosystems, and data products. In the last 10 years, I've worked primarily in the publishing space. This year, I started a new position with WTWH Media. They're a leading B2B publisher specializing in engineering, health, and retail content. With the help of WTH leadership team and Mountain Gate Capital, we launched a new AI-powered product called Clara that allows our customers to understand and reach their targeted audiences efficiently.
Awesome. Awesome. Love to hear that. We'd love to hear more about that in our discussion today. So clearly you're in the forefront of innovation as we're talking about it today. And especially for those in our audience that come from media, marketing, and advertising, we specialize quite a bit in that space. So what are we here to be tackling today? Let's talk about our agenda. So we're talking about the evolving role of the Chief Data Officer. How has this role transformed from data management to strategic visionary setting? We're going to talk about earning a seat at the table, key strategies for demonstrating the value of data leadership and driving organizational growth. We're going to talk a little bit about AI and data organizations and how AI is enhancing data capabilities and where leaders should be focusing their efforts in 2025. We're going to be talking about the build versus buy for data initiatives, deciding on when to develop solutions in-house or leveraging external tools and platforms. And then finally, we'll talk about big focus moving forward into the new year. What big opportunities and challenges CDOs will face in the coming year? So just a quick reminder for everybody that's joining in the audience, we'll wrap up with some live Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions. We will field them and we will get to them towards the end of the call. So would appreciate that. So with that, let's dive right in. Let's talk about the evolving role of the Chief Data Officer. How has the role of the CDO evolved over the past decade, particularly in organizations shifting from data management to data-driven strategy and innovation? Jeff, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think you set that question up really well, Tim. The role of the CDO goes back 10 or 15 years, was when they started to emerge. And as chief data officer, narrowly defined, really was a function of the financial crisis and having to get regulation, reporting, and governance right. Over time, we've all seen this. It's gone from a pure data management role into a quasi-technology platform management role, delivering data as a service, data as a product. And anymore, I think there's a broad expectation that a chief data and analytics officer really is a hybrid individual that wears a business hat, wears a technology hat, and has to walk on both sides of that wall. This is a role that, compared to most common titles in most organizations, has probably seen the most growth, the most expansion, the most change, and the most evolution since its creation. And it's still a very molten role. When you go from organization to organization, the CDO means something very different. And it can be on a continuum. CDAO might just mean data ops, infrastructure, and governance. Maybe you're managing data as a product, data as a service. But then in many organizations, it sits in the business. It's not even in a technology function. It may sit under a CMO. I'm increasingly seeing CDAOs that sit under a chief operations officer with an explicit focus on serving the organization, on driving business and driving business outcomes. I think I'd have to go back and look. There was a Harvard Business Review article probably a year or so ago. And I think they called it, I don't remember if they said, the summary was something about why this is the most challenging role in business or why the role is set up to fail. And the perspective, and I think the HBR authors summarized it really well. It's because you have to deliver technology, but you were expected to serve the business. And depending on where this is positioned organizationally, depending on what the culture and the expectations of the business are, that can be an exquisite challenge to do both effectively. So the role has evolved from what was something, very narrowly defined data management 10, 15 years ago, to now it is an all-encompassing data management, technology, business service, analytics, AI, ownership role that also exists really at the vanguard of what technology provides in terms of artificial intelligence. So you have to be an advocate. You have to be your own chief marketing officer. You have to run your own communications. You have to run corporate strategy, and you have to integrate seamlessly with the rest of the organization. You have to work ecumenically while also being a master of your own domain. It's exquisitely challenging, and the role continues to evolve. If we have this seminar in another 5 years, it'll be interesting to look at the recording and see how today's perspectives compare with what we look at in 2030.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it does change based upon the organization, the size, the organizational structure, what the executive leadership team looks like today, how data is utilized within the organization. So Matt, love to hear your perspective as well. Jeff clearly stated it's a role that's expanded beyond the tactical view. It's about strategic vision, cross-functionally amongst the organization. So are you seeing this shift play out in the marketing and advertising space as well?
Yeah, for sure. Jeff, great answer. You covered a lot of the things I would have covered as well. But 10 years ago, people looked at the data team to create reports on what's already happened or help them with pivot tables in Excel. It's like, and we were appreciated, but scorned. Users had to wait a long time to get their reports before wide adoption of BI tools and things like that. But data teams were like a back office department. But today, like Jeff mentioned, the data team and CDOs have a huge influence in technology and architecture choices at an organization. We sit at the same table with the CMOs, VPs of product, VPs of sales, CEOs, CFOs. And a lot of times the organization's flagship products could not exist without the complex data solutions that are being provided by the data team. So again, like Jeff said, the roles transition from a narrow focus on data governance and compliance to really like being a strategic driver of business value and products. And that, for me, that has definitely meant, increased responsibility, but also increased pressure, to monetize data through partnerships and data products, identify, kind of on our own, identify revenue generating use cases with machine learning and AI. And machine learning has increased many of our KPIs, but using true AI to really supercharge our data offerings is still a work in progress. And along those lines, like particularly in the last 2 years, the CDO really has a mandate to like innovate with AI and oversee AI ethics at the organization. It's an exciting opportunity, but it also takes a lot of people out of their comfort level from being kind of a dependable source of information and a steward of data to a completely different role. And I just want to use it like an anecdote. Having worked primarily in media organizations, this has been a challenge for me because with the rise of generative AI, it was seen as sort of a data issue. And suddenly I was tasked with making decisions on the ethics of like, responsible journalism or making the call if GPT should be allowed to ingest and train on our content. Like, will we be left behind if we block all those crawlers, or will we be completely giving up all of our IP if we allow them to happen? And those, solving those problems, answering those questions is a long way from, creating a data warehouse or creating a killer dashboard for the business.
That's a great point. Jeff,
Can I
anything?
follow up with something? Yeah, Matt, I agree with everything you said. And you called out something that is critical to the role today, tomorrow, and in the future. The CDO role, put very broadly, was initially, it was a purely defensive role. It would have lived right next door to information security or governance or anything else. And now the CDAO, by definition, is a consulting role. You are there to help the organization see what's possible, to deliver value in tangible ways. That is a fundamental shift from 10 years ago. Just the positioning, the disposition, how you think about your role in relationship to an organization. I don't remember if you used the word consultant or not, but it's certainly the word that came to mind for me. That's what you do now. That's what CDAOs do. And it's incumbent upon the role that you are a consultant to the organization. I see a huge line down the middle. And there are CDOs or CDAOs that live in a world of, rec forms and waiting for the organization to tell them what they want. And those that are reaching out and helping the organization be better. And one of them is going to go the way of the dodo birds real fast.
And this is a perfect segue as we're talking about earning a seat at the table, right? It's an evolving role. You talk about being a consultant, sort of peering into multiple functions within an organization. So when you think about that executive leadership team, one big challenge today is CDOs ensuring that they have a strong voice at the C-suite. So how can chief data officers secure that seat at the table and demonstrate that data leadership is essential to growth and innovation? Jeff, you started talking a little bit about some stories and strategies there, but how do you gain executive buy-in and alignment?
Yeah, I think the absolute bottom line, the absolute fundamental must. We can talk about what you have. We can talk about how you do it, but what you must do is deliver measurable value to the organization. You have to be able to communicate the value of what you're doing or the value of the strategy that you're delivering on in terms that resonate with the audience you're speaking with. I don't want to be prescriptive, but making this up. You may have a data strategy that delivers on many different facets serving the organization. But if you're working with a CMO, what are the CMO's goals and responsibilities? Then we're talking about maybe it's acquisition, maybe it's customer growth, maybe it's deeper share of wallet, whatever it may be. But you have to be able to communicate what you are doing in ways that matter to the audience, not the ways that I might necessarily think about it. If you're communicating the value of what you do to the organization in terms of how many models you deployed or whatever upgrades you did then bully for you, but most of the organization isn't going to care. That's not going to reach them. That's not going to speak to them. If I'm talking with a CFO about we built something, we deployed something, we streamlined something, and here's the dollars or resources or hours that we shaved off something, then that is measurable. And that's something that matters to very different people in different ways. So again, it goes into having like a business mindset where what you're doing has to be for some sort of measurable, tangible outcome. Right. Because then you know if you're doing a good job or not. Am I paying for myself? Are we hitting strategic financial goals, whatever it may be? But if you live in a world where either you're communicating to the business what you do in pure technology forms, or in the language of shiny baubles or cool inventions or so on and so forth, then you're stuck and you're going to be subject to political and financial wins. If you are able to communicate what you're doing in financial terms or terms that align with the strategic needs of the organization, I don't want to say bulletproof, but you're going to be a lot harder to move, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to contribute to that organization because you're going to be able to communicate the value of what you're doing.
Great point. Great point. Matt, any advice on maybe what resonates with you and CEOs and, talk about private equity and boards that may be showcasing the value of data?
Sure. I would say if you're still having to prove to leadership that data is important to the growth of the business, you probably want to find another company to work for. But modern businesses live and breathe data. However, I can see how people still view it as back office function, and like Jeff said, you can try to transition and move into other areas. But it's easy to get pigeonholed if you're not focusing on the right things. And my number one piece of advice is to try to establish quick wins to build credibility and trust among senior leaders and really everyone at the organization. And don't try to overextend or overpromise your first projects. Find one or two KPIs or narrowly focused product ideas and iterate on them. And try to, ideally, when you're starting off, find something that is like internal, not public facing. So you're able to, rapidly develop it without involving too many other departments necessary, that might be necessary when you're trying to launch a public facing product. And then, along the same lines, in addition to like building products and finding new opportunities, really try to champion data-driven decisions across the organization, which can be difficult because a lot of times that means making someone else, outside of the data team accountable to some KPI that you're measuring. So, you can't create those KPIs in isolation. You've really got to sit down with the stakeholders, the people in the business. I'm like, how can I make your life easier? How can I make you look better? And when you start, kind of on the front lines, you won't necessarily have to convince leadership of the value of data or data-driven decisions, because those employees that you're empowering, will kind of naturally do that for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love the data champions comment you mentioned, like having data champions in each functional area. They may not completely align the way that you think about it, but the more they know and understand those insights and then the value it brings to the organization, you're going to create those champions across the entire company. That's a great point.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We talked a little bit about AI. Matt mentioned it a couple questions ago, but obviously AI is arguably the biggest game changer in data organizations today. So, how has AI enhanced your data strategies, and where do you see its greatest potential moving forward into 2025? And Matt, we'll start with you. What's your advice for leaders, who are still figuring out how to leverage AI effectively without overwhelming their teams?
Mm-hmm. So this one, I'd probably get into the weeds a little bit on this one. And I have a lot to say about it, so bear with me. But the first part of this is relatively simple, and I would guess that most data professionals are doing this already. And generative AI has broken down a lot of the long-standing natural walls between what's a developer, what's a data scientist, what's a data engineer, and to use a hypothetical example. So, let's say a data developer has joined some data together and gives insights into potential audience size for a product based on like 10 different factors. And the end user needs to be able to choose from like 5 different drop downs and enter data into 5 different form fields. And the business wants to be able to make it available to the public, but they also want sort of a paywall in front of it where you have to provide your email address. Despite what some people might say, it is entirely possible to ask AI, as a data engineer or data scientist, to ask AI to create the front end, the back end, the security, and the UI, and then deploy that product with very little modifications. And obviously, you need to go through code reviews and things like that, and depends on what the data is and all those things. But you really can bring a product to market without having to involve 5 or 6 other engineers or developers in the process. And a second way that it's really kind of freed up the time of our data engineers and data team is we work with MySQL, BigQuery, Snowflake, Mongo, Maria, Firestore, Pandas, Python, Go, PHP, 10 modeling languages. We have to connect to 1,000 APIs, and we have to use 1,000 data libraries. With generative AI, we're able to ask, how do I do X in language Y, right? Like, I know what I'm doing. I just forgot exactly how to do it in Snowflake versus BigQuery. And that saves us 5 to 10 minutes, 25 times a day. Mm-hmm. And, fair to say, sometimes you're copying and pasting data, copying and pasting code, and you could argue that's not good practice, but you can really only be upset with that if you've never ever copied something from Stack Overflow or something like that, right? And generative AI is just a much better version of that. And we always make sure that we're doing code reviews on all code before we deploy anything. But let's use another example. Let's say we need to do a cluster analysis. Did the junior data devs on my team, did they learn that in school? Probably. Did they remember every single nuance and how to tweak and interpret every result? No, they don't. But generative AI does, and done properly, and emphasized properly. It's no different than taking a course, reading documentation, or reading a blog post, and then implementing those ideas. Another way that generative AI helps us is, while the organization has a dedicated data team, it also tangentially includes employees from marketing and operations and audience development. And increasingly, those users are tech savvy and can do experimental analysis on their own, but they absolutely do not know the syntax of the 100 systems that I listed in the previous example. And generative AI allows them to either do it on their own or take templates created by the data team and run with them. The second half of this is taking advantage of SaaS, AI, and ML tools that are available. While my team has a decent grasp on ML and data science, we have no chance. Jeff is in a different position than me, but we have no chance of building our own GPT. But we absolutely can supercharge our data products with AI tools. As an example, our subscriptions are a super important revenue source for publishing companies, and we've built ML models to predict churn, right, based on customer data and behavior. However, recommending what the next best action was once we knew someone had a high probability to churn was sort of just a guess or lots of hard-coded logic. But really quickly we were able to take what we knew feed that into AI, and it could use those multiple business rules and make an informed decision, automate the next action, and then also improve on the decisions it was making over time.
That's super neat. I'm curious, AI is such a recent buzz, but we're talking with leaders of organizations that are almost creating these incubator-like settings where everything these days has a product.ai behind it, and there's so many tools and accessibility beyond it. But champions, like building champions, like data champions internally for AI, like you can get really distracted. You get your eye off the ball real quick by all of these tools to capture what could help you in your business. Any thoughts from the two of you on just sort of like maybe some best practices and what you've learned along the way there?
Yeah, Jeff, you want to go?
No, please go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's not any different than any other situation we've been in the last 15 years of what language do we choose to build our website? What CSS language, what flavor of JavaScript do we want to use? It's the same types of questions, just a different technology, and you just have to try to keep your eye on what is it that you're actually trying to build, and make sure that you're just selecting the right tools to get to your end goal without, don't forget your product has nothing to do with your product to the customer, has nothing to do with the technology that you're choosing, right? You just need to make the right choices to get to your end goal.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. I completely agree. I would go further, kind of the larger question about how has AI maybe changed data organizations. The two biggest components, once you get beyond the technology itself, the technology, the consulting, what problem are we solving? Can we build it in-house, so on and so forth? That's like, a problem solution technology question. But once you get beyond that, change management in AI-related projects or initiatives is fundamentally different from change management surrounding most other initiatives. It's really critical because, and again, Matt, you called out all of it. I want to make an outline of all the things, the points that you made and how it all, I think, really leads up to this. AI is very accessible. AI is a technology, quote unquote, that's very accessible to the business side. People are using it. People have concepts of it. You may be using co-pilots. You may be using ChatGPT to elevate knowledge workers. We have all these little hacks now. It's 2024. We're all of 24 months into contemporary business AI, and we're using it to get rid of rote or repetitive tasks, and everybody touches it. There's nobody, this is the internet in 1995. Everybody has some sense of what it is, and they've used it for something. Maybe not, they're not getting 500 horsepower out of it, but everybody's fiddled with it. And so when you want to build a codified AI product, service, solution, and roll this out for an organization, the change management starts up front before you've even had the twinkle in your eye of an idea. Where I've seen success is extending data literacy programs to include AI literacy. And that starts sowing the seeds with executive management. What is the contemporary landscape on a quarterly or a biannual basis? Here's the landscape. Here's where we are. Here's our roadmap. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we've done in the past. Here's where it fits in. Here's how we align. It rolls down to leadership of business functions, ensuring they also have visibility into what you're doing, what you've done for others of value. They see that you're the partner. You're there to help them. They also see that when you are identifying potential needs or opportunities, you are working upfront from day one with them iteratively. The antique IT paradigm of submit your business requirements and we'll come back in 6 months and throw at you what we think you asked for could not be more wrong. So you're a partner, you're working iteratively with the organization, you're making sure that you have buy-in and integration from the very beginning, not we've built it and then we'll make a couple hundred associates sit through a required 2 hours of training before they ignore it and go back to what they've done previously. You're making sure that people know how it works, how it helps them, why it's going to make things better for them. that you are a partner and you're leading that change management from the very, very beginning. That way, you're also able to do some, not just internal de-risking, but some debunking of people's concerns or apprehensions about using it. What's the role of AI within our organization? Is it going to take roles and jobs, so on and so forth? And fundamentally, you're able to help people see that what you are doing as a chief data and analytics officer to use AI solutions simply streamlines what we're doing as an organization. It makes people's jobs easier. And in every instance that I know, there was a figure that I would draw sometimes, and it's you have a pyramid-shaped skill chart and a rectangle-shaped skill chart. And most organizations start, when we live in a world of manual labor, we have fewer and fewer people going up the pyramid who are working higher and higher on the knowledge chain, doing mostly knowledge work, very little manual work. And then at the bottom, you have a lot of people who are doing highly manual work. AI shifts that pyramid more toward a rectangle, where most people get elevated in the level of knowledge work that they're doing. And what you described, Matt, is perfect. If you have somebody who's writing code, you may not know all 5 languages. You might have to patch some things together. But rather than hiring somebody who is a wizard at a particular language and knows the ins and outs of syntax and where we're going to throw errors, so on and so forth, now it requires the people who are going to, hey, please generate some code that does X, Y, and Z because I need to build a patch for something. Now, all of a sudden, it's incumbent upon those individuals that they know how things work, why they work, not just can I plug and play the code itself. So the way that I see AI changing data organizations, I agree with everything that you said, Matt. And then going beyond that, it extends data literacy programs, and it requires a different form of change management. So it changes the way we interact with the business as well.
Yeah, those are all great points. And we're already alluding into the next question here about the build versus buy decision. You know, it's hard to ignore, right? There's so many different AI solutions, and where and when do you implement them? Or where do you sort of make your own custom solution? But maybe even non-AI related, I mean, are there sort of frameworks and decision-making experiences that you've had where, that will, allow you to essentially make that decision to build versus buy? And what trends do you see shaping in the new year there?
So my internal litmus test, and I've gone pretty far in life without being terribly smart, but maybe being okay at making decisions. One, really answer. Again, this goes back to pushing this pretty hard. You're there to drive business. So if you have a potential solution that you believe can be solved with a new technology, and it may be AI, it may be anything, the first question is, would we get better performance if we built it ourselves? If you are a large data-centric organization, there is a really good chance that you have better information than a commercial vendor would be for building a model or a technology. The analogy I've used is you can go to the mall right now and you can go into Banana Republic and you can buy a really nice suit. It's going to look great. But the cheapest bespoke suit you ever buy is going to fit you than a really nice off-the-rack suit. If you have the data resources internally, it's very likely that if you could build the solution, it would outperform a commercial solution that was, built to fit everything in your industry. So the first question is, would you get better performance if you built it yourself? The second is, do you have the internal capabilities to build and support that solution? And capabilities means experience, it means talent, it means platforms, it means technology, and it also means internal appetite for doing these things. If you don't have all of these, then despite your best efforts, it's going to be a real challenge. And then the third parameter is a little squishier, but you have to factor in how long would it take you to build this? How much would it cost you to build this? And is there a commodity solution available? In very recent experience, I was working with an organization, and gosh, at this point, you could get off-the-shelf open source AI solutions that would do text to audio transcription. Okay, so you can do that. You could build it, you could deploy it, you could scale it. Or it was simply checking an additional box on a vendor that we already had under contract through procurement, and they simply begin delivering that service the next day. So to build it, prove it out, stand up the pipeline, everything else, that probably 12-month process, it's check a box, and we've already got it. So in that solution, for a commodity solution, it was a buy. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
There are other solutions having to do with risk, with forecasting, with underwriting, with fraud, like this. These are custom-made insurance for building internal solutions, because almost without exception, they will wildly outperform, I don't want to say generic, general commercially available solutions.
Yeah. And I can imagine, coming from the highly regulatory environments like financial services, that's risk department is brought in, compliance is brought in on that decision making. But three things I took from that: the performance, is it going to drive better performance? Do you have the talent internally, or do you have to invest in hiring that talent? And then the other was a two-part, is how long and what would it cost? Those are great points. Matt, anything to add?
Jeff nailed it on that. I mean, I would just, for us, my current organization, and previous, kind of worked with smaller and medium-sized companies. Generally, we're not going to have that talent necessary to build those products ourselves.
Right.
So for us, it's sort of a no-brainer for most of the initiatives. It's always going to be buy. And one good thing about a lot of these products is it's AI products in the marketplace now. You're not usually not having to sign 1-year contracts and spend months in a implementation phase. It's more of a pay-as-you-go type of situation. So we can, if we've chose the wrong product to start off with, it's usually easiest for us to swap out vendors or choose a different product. The other thing I would just add is that for us, our main product is not AI, right? Our product is audience data. Right. And our customers are not asking us for an AI tool. They're just happy if the products that we offer that made them choose us in the first place can be enhanced, like regardless of how that's happening behind the scenes. And marketing and sales, we want to say we're powered by AI, and that's fine because we are. But our product is not AI; it's our data, and you just want to always make sure you're not losing sight of your core product, which in our case is it's being enhanced by AI, but it's not AI.
Yeah, I love that. Don't lose sight of the core product. That's a great takeaway there. So let's pivot a little bit, and this is looking ahead. We're talking about 2025 right around the corner. The question is, what should chief data officers prioritize? We talked about a lot of things right here. AI. You talked about audience data. We talked a little bit about cybersecurity and compliance, organizational structure, and hiring and talent. But what are some critical focus areas that will set organizations up for success? I guess we'll start with Jeff. Where do you think CDOs should be placing their bets in 2025?
I'm going to skirt the technology answer and talk about how you are positioning yourself within an organization. Good. The greatest opportunity I think CDAOs have in 2025 and beyond is the ability to articulate a clear strategy and roadmap, those are separate, that align with supporting the critical needs of the organization, organizational needs writ large, and then being able to pull threads off of that to connect to the major stakeholders within the organization. You have to be able to look backwards and say, here's how we've done this previously, here's where we are on the roadmap, on the transformation, and in the midst of whatever initiative you're leading, but be able to demonstrate that you've done this historically, talk about what is in flight now, call your shot on when there's going to be a solution and what it's going to look like, and what you're going to do next. This makes you indispensable and also ingratiates partnership within the stakeholders across the organization. That's what's going to allow you not just to be successful in the near term, but allow you to continue to cast the delivery forward in your role while you contribute to the organization. The technology is a means to an end. You're in business for business. You're not in business for technology's sake. And if you can keep that at the forefront of your mind, then you will be the master of your own ship in aligning evolving technology, emerging capabilities with what you are delivering on for the organization. In the absence of that, I think it gets very precarious. So the reason I call that out now, Tim, is broadly speaking, not all, but I've seen the last 5 years, because of the amorphous nature of what the CDAO has become. Sometimes it's a quasi-innovation function, it's a reporting function, it's all these different things. If you can be one of the first CDAOs that your organization is familiar with firsthand, who says, guess what, guys, here is a strategy, here's a big picture alignment with what we're doing as an organization and how I'm going to help lead you there, you become an indispensable figure within the organization. The tools and technology questions, to some extent, kind of answer themselves.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Matt?
Yeah, that was going to be my main point too. Is articulating your strategy and your roadmap. The only other thing I would add is, making sure that you're spending time enhancing your organization, your data literacy at an organization level. So it's training all employees, like how to interpret insights, make data informed decisions. Because with the myriad of, for lack of a better word, like drag and drop analytics tools integrated with AI, like a much larger percentage of your organization can be actionable with data on their own, and which is great, but they need education on how to use them properly, and obviously making sure they're not sharing or using PII, putting PII or confidential information into places you don't want them to go. And like in the past, with this type of thing, it used to be, don't email spreadsheets with PII information in them. The only way to combat that is just with constant communication and making sure that you're reiterating that point over and over again, that yes, we want you to use these tools, we want you to use all these new capabilities, but you have to do it safely and you have to do it the right way.
Yeah, good.
Great point. Great point. Well, that's huge, especially for those that are looking to sort of take that next step in their career. So we do have a question from the audience. The first question is, what's the best piece of advice you would have for an emerging data leader who's looking to make the jump into the CDO role? Maybe they're fast-tracked, maybe it's a succession plan. Like, how can they really take that next step? Jeff, we'll start with you.
I think you need to understand who your key stakeholder or stakeholders are. That's it. Because if somebody is going to be, I don't want to say benefactor, that sounds disingenuous, but making sure that you are serving the needs of the people who are going to empower you, and then you grow outward from there. But I cannot underscore enough, and I'm sure it's come through in the course of this discussion, the importance I place on not simply delivering business value, but making sure that the organization recognizes the value of what you do. I've seen really amazing things done and built, and they live in a closet and they sit 5 levels behind any sort of visibility, and nobody knows they ever happened. Mm-hmm. And these could have been, wonderful transformative things. So whatever you are doing, you have to make sure that you are communicating and demonstrating value to the people who are putting you in this position, and then also branching outward from there so that you are delivering value to the organization.
Love that. Love that. And before you jump in, Matt, anybody in the audience that has a question, please fire it in the chat. We'll get to it. We have another question that just came in. We'll get to it in just a minute. Matt, but similar to Jeff, any advice for data leaders looking to break into that first CDO role?
No, I think he really nailed it on that. I wouldn't add anything else.
Okay. Well, then we'll come to you first on this question. So Jack asks, given the increasing complexity of data roles, what skills or profiles are you prioritizing when building your team for the future?
Yeah, that really depends on what your business is and what your goals are. I can only answer this, I guess, from my own perspective. I am, looking for people who are. I think it's important to be proficient in in Python and have the ability to do your job each day, but also carve out appropriate amounts of time to try out emerging capabilities and technologies in the AI and ML field, and be able to be a self-starter and say, hey, I found this thing that can make us 20% more efficient, or reduce the amount of churn by 15% or whatever. Like, just have the ability to think out. I hate to say, think outside of the box, and think of how we can really use all the emerging technologies to apply to our business.
No, that's good. So we hear in the recruiting space, especially for data roles and engineering roles, Python, such a big coding language that's often brought up. But you mentioned something that I just want to reiterate. It's almost like a level of curiosity beyond your day-to-day. Like, what are you doing to stay ahead of the curve? And when you're interviewing candidates, that's going to allow, if you have two candidates that are sort of neck and neck for a job, maybe somebody's a little bit more curious could be the person that you would end up hiring. Jeff, any thoughts?
I would be repeating the same thing Matt said in slightly different terms. Really, I'm looking for somebody who has some, at any level. This can be an entry level, mid-level, even relatively senior level. I need somebody who has some high level quantitative or technical experience, some demonstrable bona fides or chops. They've done some stuff. That's minimum. I need somebody who can solve problems, and I need to see that. And I need evidence of being a self-learner. These are the people that in the 50s were in their garages playing with radios and things like that. Today it's, hey, I built an application that does whatever for fun. I'm looking for self-learners, because the space we are describing is so rapidly evolving that I'll tell you, the first language I learned was R. That was great for about 3 years. And if I hung my hat on, I'm going to be work in R the rest of my life, I'd still be sitting where I was if I still had a job. So you have to be able to grow and evolve rapidly. You can't be married to a particular technology or solution, or there's a real chance that, I don't know how many COBOL programmers are still hanging around, but once every 99 years, they're really, really good.
Well said. Well said. Well, we have time for one more question from the audience here. Matt, we'll start with you. How do you communicate the ROI of data initiatives to non-technical execs who may not see the immediate results?
I think you've got to find a way to have some small KPIs that are, first off, we talked about if you can define your strategy clearly and where you're going to get to, that's step one. Step two is, you've got to find some KPIs that are measurable early and often. So that, your finished product may be a year away, but you should be able, whatever you're doing, you should be able to measure that your success in whatever you're doing by some metric. And if you can, if you can create a couple of those and then show how, hey, this product we're building, it's not working yet, but it's 10% better than it was last week at scanning a PDF and OCRing it, whatever. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah. You put yourself in the chair of the person you're talking to and you ask, why would they want to do this?
Yeah.
That's it. And it better be something more tangible than it makes things better. So what's it good for? And then if you want to go to the 400 level, you go, why would they not want to do this? Or why would they want to do something different? And you have that internal vetting session with yourself, and you have that across all of your stakeholders before you ever go talk to anybody, so that you have a solution that is the best solution for the organization. Maybe not everybody gets a rainbow and a puppy, but if the organization wins and everybody's getting something out of it, that's how you're going to make this successful. And you bake a measurement plan into everything that you do so that you can communicate it along the way and in the future, so people don't forget the value of what you did. You're on mute, Tim.
Sorry about that. The value that we're bringing, and I think that's what the overarching theme is here, data value. So We're going to wrap up. These are all great topics, great responses to some questions that are in the minds of leaders and those in the data space coming up in the new year. So before we wrap up, huge thank you to Jeff and Matt for sharing their expertise today. You both provided incredible insights on what it means to be a future-ready CDO. So to our audience, thank you for joining us. Hope you are walking away with some valuable insights, some ideas, some strategies, and some inspiration going into the new year. But before you go, in the chat, there will be a quick survey that's dropped. We truly appreciate your feedback. We at Talentfoot are going to continue to deliver valuable content, and your feedback is crucial for that. Few things. One, connect with Jeff and Matt online on LinkedIn. Follow their work, follow their thought leadership. And secondly, follow Talentfoot. We provide thought leadership on at a minimal once a month basis for webinars, continue to put out content, and exciting job opportunities. And finally, if you're growing your technology team, Talentfoot would love to be a partner and would help you build your future-ready bench. So let's make 2025 a year of bold leadership and innovation together. Thank you both again, and thank you all for attending, and happy holidays, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right.